Welcome to another edition of Daily Airline News, focusing on the search for MH370. And delighted to say I'm joined by my co-host Richard Godfrey in Germany. Good morning, Richard.
Good afternoon, Jeffrey.
And so we're going to be answering questions following on from the Martin Smith update. But before we do, Ashton Forbes. There's been about 6 or 7 of you who have kept mentioning we should be looking at Ashton Forbes. So before we start, here is a message. The videos are fake. There are no orbs. The aliens did not take MH370. Richard, you concur?
Neither the aliens nor any other dark forces. So MH370 carried on flying for 7 hours, 37 minutes until fuel exhaustion. Full stop.
Great. That's the last time we'll mention Ashton Forbes. Now back to business as usual, but a little bit of a twist. You've got a bit of an Armada update, I believe, Richard.
Yeah, Armada 7806 arrived in Port Louis, Mauritius. It stayed there a little while, and it is now heading for Cape Town, South Africa, where it's expected to arrive in about 9 days' time, the end of the month. We're showing a screenshot of the Armada 7806 route from Singapore through to Mauritius and then on to Cape Town. Cape Town is a normal stop on the way to the Atlantic, and there's obviously business for Armada 7806 in the Atlantic somewhere.
Well, let's hope we see her back or one of her sister ships not in the not too distant future. So back to viewer comments and questions. A comment from Craig Houston. Of all the information that has been released over the years, you guys are the only ones that I have heard who are even close to reality. Thank you. Well, I agree with that.
Yeah, that's a nice comment. Thank you. I didn't want to lose my sense of reality.
So as a comment from Robert Richardson, 6464, Jeffrey, and I presume it's also Richard as well, I asked, do you speak from memory or have you already made an outline to speak with? I admire your knowledge of all the subjects you guys are talking about. If I may say, you are a powerhouse of knowledge. My personal info is I'm a commercial multi-engine flight instructor pilot and just added small UAS rating. They will find MH370 of that knowledge isn't already available to some secret 3-letter agency. I'm retired from my formal occupation. So to answer the question, some of it we search out and a lot of it's from memory, correct?
Yeah, so we've been working on this, both of us, for 11 years. So we've got a lot of stuff that we've looked at. Haven't spent too much time on the 3-letter agencies. There are plenty of them. FBI, CIA, NSA, BND. I could carry on. But we do have a general plan of what we want to cover in the different episodes, and we do have specific scripts that we write for particular subjects. But then we quite often embellish and go off script and add when a particular question comes up.
That's about it. At Francis Botham, a question is, are global over-the-horizon radar sites connected in a network?
And that's a very deep question. There are 9 over-the-horizon radar skywave systems currently operated by the US and their allies, and partly with the help of US personnel. So, showing a screenshot, for example, of the Yawn facility, which is one of the over-the-horizon radar systems in this network. There are others in the North Atlantic, Chesapeake Bay, Virginia. There's one in covering Central America, in Corpus Christi in Texas. There's another in Puerto Rico covering South America and South Atlantic. Those are US facilities direct. Then there's Jawn in Australia, which is in three different sites. There's also Pine Gap in Australia, which is a joint US and Australian facility. There's another one in France called Nostradamus, and there's one based in Cyprus. There's a sovereign area belonging to the UK in Cyprus, and there's an overhead horizon radar. Then there are several ground wave systems covering the North Atlantic, the Mediterranean, and even one in Romania run by American personnel covering the Black Sea. There are others planned. In Canada is planning on buying the Jawn system from Australia. The US are planning one in the Pacific Ocean on Palau. And there's also a big upgrade going on to the Jawn facility, which will make it even more effective in covering Asia, the Pacific and Indian Ocean. So there are a lot of systems out there, and we're going to include a link to the history of over the horizon radar systems in the US. Of course, the Russians and the Chinese and others have also got over the horizon radar systems, but we're focusing on those that belong to the US and their allies.
But are they connected though, Richard?
Oh, yeah, they are all connected, and they're on a Five Eyes network, and the information is all centralized in the NSA database at Fort Meade.
Mm, fascinating. So, Jeff Daniel, 814, thank you for all the links you have provided today. A comment regarding security. I don't think many outside of those who were bound by their country's Official Secrets Acts know what it was like to learn to keep your mouth shut means. I myself was bound by our laws for 38 years during my working career. And even now, as those obligations had never been formally lifted, I still consider myself bound by the provisions of those laws. It is a habit I have been forced to be permanent, I found to be permanent. The need and the ability to not talk, even casually, to others whom I know were also bound by the same laws. That's an interesting dynamic, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, Jeff, you and I both, and probably several of our viewers, and I know how you feel. So I'm also not allowed to say some things I know. I cannot even mention what clearance I have or from whom. Um, and like you, I'm bound for life by the Official Secrets Act. So, we can meet up for a drink if you want, Jeff, but of course there can't be any bar talk.
Yeah. So I'll join you and I'll do all the talking. So at HKGK001 in South Africa, we call it a balls up.
Yeah. Well, whether you call it a muck up, a screw up, or a balls up, I think we're all speaking the same language.
Yeah, indeed we are. Nick Darling 5557. There are so many possibilities and questions. It would not be cool to admit no one could see it flying all over the place because it questions air defense and detection. Sure does. Then you could say, if it was detected, why was the alarm not sounded by whoever detected it? The fact that some plane companies are giving no comment raises eyebrows. US planes searching in the almost correct spot the next day, well, the main search was somewhere else, while the main search was somewhere else, all stinks. Yep.
Yeah, Nick, well, it is a question of who knew what and when and how. We're showing a screenshot of the Echelon Global Listening Station and Satellite Network. The UK USA agreement was established way back in 1946, and it provides for a comprehensive intelligence sharing between the UK and the USA, and subsequently Canada, Australia, and New Zealand joined that agreement. The particular network entities in each country are the GCHQ in the UK, the NSA in the USA, the CSE in Canada, ASD in Australia, and the GCSB in New Zealand. These countries operate shared listening stations and conduct joint operations. So Pine Gap in Australia is jointly run by the US and the Australians. So the facilities at Menwith Hill in the UK are jointly run by the US and the UK. And there's a Walhopai station in New Zealand and the Misawa Air Base in Japan. Similarly, all part of this network. We're showing a screenshot of the radomes at Misawa Air Base, and those radomes you'll find are quite familiar in other listening stations. There are several other network entities, including the BND in Germany and the GSSE in France. The BND have reduced sharing with the NSA since they discovered 40,000 NSA selectors targeting European companies. And the question was whether the Americans were taking a industrial espionage advantage over European companies. So you get, Boeing getting information and Airbus not. And the DGSE in France have a formal cooperation with the Five Eyes in what is called the Lustre Agreement. And there is a Five Eyes Plus group, which includes France, Germany, Japan, South Korea, and India. And they join from time to time on a need to know basis. And all of this data comes together in the NSA at Fort Meade. They have a search engine called IC Reach with data from all the Five Eyes members. And the Five Eyes have an intelligence sharing system over a secure network. They have a focus on different geographic areas. So the USA focus on the Americas and Russia, the Middle East and China, UK on Europe and the former Soviet Union and the Middle East, Canada also on Russia and parts of Latin America, and Australia and New Zealand cover Asia and the Pacific and the Indian Ocean. And they have several systems, PRISM, X Keyscore, Tempora, Muscular, and Echelon, which is the main one. But since Echelon has been revealed, I presume it is now being replaced with yet another system which we're not told about. And the network that shares all this data is called Stone Ghost, the secure satellite network.
Wow. Impressive. Darwin Stubby, 860. We've heard from him before. Thank you, gentlemen, for confirming that MH370 was heading for Diego Garcia at one stage. This was actually shown by an arrow on the first news on the 9th of March 2014. Only later on they changed the arrow to the south. And this is all related here, Richard. Panda Bear, 1964. Quality show. As always, my question is, Diego Garcia must have a super radar system and must have spotted MH370 at some stage. How early in its flight did it pop up on their screens?
Yeah, well, MH370 popped up on their screens in real time as it happened. And let me tell you how that works. So we've mentioned Pine Gap in Australia, and we're showing a screenshot of Pine Gap. That was established in the late 60s to back then monitor and track Soviet missile capabilities, and its functions have evolved over time. Pine Gap is a key contributor to the NSA's global surveillance and interception efforts. So it is a major contributor to the Echelon program. It's jointly operated by the Australian Defence Force, the Australian Signals Directorate, ASD, as I mentioned, the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency, the CIA, the U.S. National Security Agency, NSA, and the U.S. National Reconnaissance Office, NRO. Um, there are three different types of over the horizon radar: monostatic, bistatic, and multistatic. The first, monostatic, just means it's in one location. So the transmitter and the receiver are co-located. And bistatic, the second type, has a dedicated transmitter located 100 kilometers or up to 3,000 kilometers from the receiver. So it has two locations. And then there's a multistatic system. The This is the third type, and this is when you only have a receiver. The transmitter is basically using all the so-called illuminators of opportunity. A complex phrase, but what that means is they use FM radio, digital TV, broadcasting towers, the cellular base stations, Wi-Fi, satellite transmissions, commercial air traffic control radars, navigation aids like VOR and DME, and of course the HF radio amateur transmissions. And all of this fog of radio waves is used to illuminate these targets in a multi-static. Now, if you have a monostatic or bistatic system, you sight the transmitter, you control the radiative properties of the emitters, the propagation channel characteristics, and most importantly, the transmitted waveforms, all under your control. In a multistatic system, you lose those advantages of control, but they are very cost effective, multi frequency, hard to detect, and less susceptible to electronic countermeasures, and can enhance a radar cross section of a target and even stealth aircraft. So Diego Garcia is a small island, but it could fit a monostatic active over the horizon radar or a multistatic passive over the horizon radar. Jawn, for example, in Australia is huge and covers a large area. They're a network covering the whole of Australia. There are three transmitter and receiver pairs, and each 80 to 120 kilometers apart, and they cover 2,272 kilometers across Australia, and they're all controlled from Royal Air Force Base Edinburgh down in South Australia, which is another 1,728 kilometers distant. So you can see how these are all networked and connected. It's actually quite an interesting topic.
So it wouldn't matter if the Jawn system, which Australia said was turned off on that particular that particular time, it wouldn't really have mattered because Pine Gap would have picked it up and Diego Garcia would have picked it up.
Yeah, but Jawn itself is three different systems. So,
Yeah.
you know, even if one was switched off, were they all three switched off at the same time? I can't believe that.
No,
And then, as you say, if John was switched off, then there are other like Pine Gap, and so I'm quite sure there is more info out there than we're being told.
clearly. So Jag Racer Shoestring 609, the plane has been in a hangar on the US airfield of Diego Garcia since day one. A photo was on YouTube years ago. And Colin J88, he replied, if it was on the internet, it must be real. That was kind of interesting. And
I
then
think that might be
Rachel,
a facetious comment there.
yes, absolutely. Rachel Murray chimed in 1228. Hi guys, thanks for your updates every day except for Saturday. And since you have finally raised the issue of Diego Garcia, I want to ask if there could be a probability that MH370 had been shot down because it possibly could have been trailing smoke and headed for DG and probably a threat to DG. Could the Inmarsat data, which came in late, be a fake to cover up the true story of what really happened to the plane? The debris will then be found somewhere along those islands south of DG. Thank you for your great work, guys, and we should keep open minds. Yes. And then finally, Brian Bosomworth, 7555, question, if I may, can we rule out that the plane was not shot out of the sky by Diego Garcia fighter jets for pilot non-compliance? I presume the jets wouldn't have the fuel capacity to travel this far, and also could the whisper data pick up such an event if this did happen? I presume Blaine would have noticed fire damage on the parts that he found washed up if this was the case. Keep up the great work, gents, and we must never give up hope of finding the plane to enable closure for the affected families. So those questions and comments are kind of related there, Richard.
Yeah. And in my view, we can rule out that MH370 was shot down by the US military. We are going to do an episode on MH17 and the Korean Cal 007, both of which were shot down. And when you see the evidence that is produced in both of those cases from the wreckage, it's completely different. It's full of shrapnel holes, bullet holes, and completely different from the wreckage that we've recovered from MH370. If you think about it for a moment, we have shown that Inmarsat data was distributed in real time to multiple databases around the world. Difficult to fake. We've shown that the Whisper passive radar data tracked MH370 until fuel exhaustion, and that agrees with the Inmarsat satellite data. And yeah, if there were fighters launched, we would be able to track those too. We've also shown the oceanographic drift analysis from UWA and the debris finds by Blaine and over 20 other people or more. They also align with the Inmarsat and the Whisper data. And Blaine specifically said he couldn't find any burn marks or evidence of fire on the debris that he's recovered. So we're now saying there was an over-the-horizon radar network, and this is put out to the Five Eye countries also in real time. So if you're going to fake all of that data in real time from multiple independent sources being distributed across several networks, both civilian and military around the globe, you have a huge task on your hand, and I don't think you would succeed.
No, there's just there's too many dynamics. There's too many people would have to be involved. It just simply couldn't possibly happen. Claude Mercier, or Mercier, 3373. I start to understand the mistakes they all did and they want to cancel.
Well, that's a deep statement. Um, and I think, Claude, we all agree with you. We would all like to understand the mistakes that were made, and we don't want to cover them up. We want to bring them to light.
Yeah. Deborah Allen, Sierra 1K, why is the blue MH370, the blue line MH370, flying erratic like a zigzag? And Branko Nudari, 8407, question for Richard. Why is MH370 Whisper estimated track in the southern Indian Ocean zigzagging? I can't think of any good reason why a person piloting MH370 would do such maneuvers. And Meof NZ 2320 on the same vein. Indeed, while I believe the whisper process has substance, I'm afraid the zigzag track is highly unlikely. It implies either significant inaccuracy or patchy reliability of the data available at the time.
Right. Well, that's a interesting one. Why the zigzag? MH370 made two major turns right at the start. We're showing a screenshot of the initial flight path. So the first turn at 1725 UTC, a diversion back across Malaysia, and a turn back almost through 180 degrees in the other direction. And secondly, at 1830 UTC in the Andaman Sea on the other side of Malaysia, a turn south left by 90 degrees or so into the Indian Ocean. It is not unreasonable to consider there may have been further turns. And know when you get on a plane, you normally always fly in a straight line. Actually, it's not completely a straight line. There are turns at different waypoints, or sometimes you turn to divert to avoid weather. Um, in any case, if you fly for 6 hours from the Andaman Sea in a straight line until fuel exhaustion, it is easy to work out where the plane crashed. And I think the pilot wanted to make it difficult to work out where the plane crashed. The pilot was concerned also about encountering other air traffic en route and being observed. And we're showing an overview of the entire MH370 flight according to Whisper. And yes, it is a zigzag path. Now, the Boeing 777 has a TCAS system, traffic collision avoidance system, and that shows any other aircraft in your vicinity. The downside is if you switch it on, you reveal your position and altitude to all the other aircraft. So, in my view, the pilot intermittently switched on the TCAS system to see if any other aircraft were in the vicinity. And he did that especially when he was crossing other flight routes. And if there was no other aircraft around, well, fine. If there was another aircraft, the pilot of that other aircraft might report in to ATC, just like Captain Martin Smith did, that there was an unidentified aircraft, say at flight level 350 and heading 160, and give the game away. If the pilot changed course and altitude frequently, then if he was observed again, the report to ATC would be different. There's now an unidentified aircraft at flight level 370 on a heading of 200 degrees. And that would not give the game away because the ATC would not then connect the two different sightings. So there is a reason, in my view, why the zigzag path and different altitudes and different headings were used, and that was to ensure that any information given to ATC would make it difficult to work out where MH370 crashed.
So, Ray of Lights 62, love the answer Richard Godfrey provided about the role of electromagnetic noise in the whisper systems. In the golden era of shortwave radio, people were able to communicate halfway through the globe with QRP rigs, notwithstanding monster QRM sources like the woodpecker. Then digital modulations and SDRs came, changing the face of the game as special signal processing software running on cheap GHZ clocked microprocessors allowed the radio operators to detect signals deep below the noise threshold, and the rest is history. Regards, Anthony.
Yeah, Anthony, I think you might have confused some of our viewers who are not radio amateurs, and I think we need to translate your comment. QRP is transmitting at reduced power while attempting to maximize a station's effective range. QRM is interference from man-made sources, which is sometimes deliberate, as you point out. It was the case of the woodpecker, as it's called, which is an infamous Russian transmitter on the HF bands, and we will supply QRM and tinfoil hats if you want to go into that one. Um, SDR is software defined radio, where radio communication system uses software to process various signals instead of traditional hardware components. And nowadays, just about everything has gone digital, but there are still some analog people out there. And Whisper is based on a digital protocol implemented in a computer program used for weak signal radio communication between radio amateurs. And the protocol was designed and the program initially written by a guy called Professor Joe Taylor. So we owe a lot to him.
Indeed. Final question, HKGK001 again. Would love to hear more about Amelia Earhart.
Yeah, and we plan an episode, HKGK.
So, viewers, that's all we've got time for today. We're running out of time. Thank you, Richard, for your tremendous amount of work putting all this together today. And viewers, tomorrow we'll be back with more of your questions surrounding Captain Martin Smith, Diego Garcia, and the Poseidons. And then on Saturday, we're going to take a break. And then on Sunday, we're coming back as the Plane Guys. And we're going to talk about a very famous or infamous crash of a Turkish Airlines DC-10, March the 3rd, 1974, just outside Paris. And we're going to reveal a few things that really haven't seen the light of day. So, Richard, thank you again for all your work. Viewers, thank you for watching. Please subscribe. Please like us. And please do send those comments in, and please do tune in tomorrow. Thank you, Richard.
You're welcome.